I have an apology to make. Today's topic of conversation is one that I haven't done yet because I assumed I had done it already. And I only just recently realized that I hadn't when I went to go look for the link. I was in an online conversation and I was like, oh, I did a video on that. Let me find the link. I haven't done it yet. Homogeneity in class design, 4th edition versus 5th edition. The classic archetypal complaint of people who have not played 4th edition is that all the classes are basically the same. Like, everything feels so samey. All the defenders mark, all the leaders heal, all the controllers do AoEs, and all the strikers do damage. And so they're all the same. There's only 4 classes. That is how I assume that they talk. So that is the classic argument. This could not be further from the truth. It is sort of like taking a technical truth in that, yeah, all of the defender classes utilize a mark mechanic. All of the leader classes have the ability to heal. All of the controller classes have some degree of area of effect abilities. Actually, I'm not even sure if that one's true. I have not looked at the Seeker in a long time. I'm not sure if they do AoEs. And then all of the strikers do high damage. Arguably. So actually, yeah, that one's not entirely true. So it's based on a half technical truth. Because like the Avenger doesn't do really high damage, they do consistent damage. They have a high average damage while not actually doing high damage per hit. So it's based on that, and they sort of use that to insinuate that all the defender classes have the same mechanics, all the leader classes have all the same mechanics, etc. And this isn't true. It's just not true. It's not remotely true. Every defender class has different mechanics for how they apply their mark, how they punish enemies that defy their mark, how they interact with their mark mechanics, on top of having all different class features and all different powers. Leaders. So here's the thing that people point at, inspiring word and healing word are the same power with a different name. So they are the same power, and so your leaders are basically the same class. So that's 1 power. 1. I don't believe any other 2 powers between the warlord and the cleric are the same. B, they don't even function the same because the cleric has a class feature that interacts with healing, and so in practice, they behave differently, even though the powers are written to be identical. C, what was C? C, that is 1 example. It's 1. It's a bad example. To be sure, as I just pointed out, it's a bad example, but it is just 1 example. Compare that to, say, the overlap in spells between the bard, the druid, and the cleric. All the spells that they have in common. I see your healing word / inspiring word argument, and I raise you all the spell overlaps in 5th edition. You want to talk about homogeneity? Classes having the exact same features? 5th edition is the edition where that happens. Think about how many classes get the exact same feature at 5th level. Extra attack. How many classes get the exact same feature at 1st level? Spell casting. This is what homogeneity looks like, having the exact same features. And it's not like spellcasting is even just 1 feature. It's a massive feature that has its tendrils all throughout the classes that have them. It is the majority of your class's features are spellcasting and the sort of ongoing implications of that. And if you look at the class lists, there is significant overlap. The wizard spell list and the sorcerer spell list, not identical, but they are extremely similar. There's so much overlap between the cleric and the druid and the bard with these sort of support type spell lists. Extreme overlap. The ranger kind of borrows a lot of the druid stuff. What else we have? The paladin and the cleric, obviously, there's a lot of overlap there. If you actually look at the number of unique spells, and by unique, I mean spells that don't appear on any other classes' lists, the base lists. The artificer has none to start with. No unique spells. They borrow entirely from other classes' spell lists. The cleric has a few. The wizard has several. The sorcerer has just a handful, I think, altogether. They have like Chaos Bolt, and I think they've got some kind of like Dragon Breath ability that's unique to them. All of the, a bunch of bad spells that are unique to the sorcerer. Even some of the most iconic spells for the cleric are not unique to the cleric list because the paladin gets them. Spells that are iconic for the druid are not unique to the druid list because the ranger gets them. So you want to talk about homogeneity. Identical spells are shared across multiple classes. That's homogeneous class design. And this is before we even get into how similar the actual play experience is. Because if you are a weapon user, you're going to be spending 90% of your turns doing basic attacks on your turn. Whether it's a ranged attack or a melee attack, that's what you're going to be doing. It's the exact same play experience, just because you're a primary weapon user. And the sun was not out when I started this video, so I'm going to call some BS on that. I've been sabotaged. I've been set up. So anyways, so when people say that 4th edition is very homogenous and that all the class design is very samey, I call BS on that immediately. That is a false argument. And it also ignores a lot of the facts about the way that 5th edition is designed. Now, are there other examples? So there is actually an example in my mind that is a better example than the healing word / inspiring word example, because that's the one everyone goes to. That was sort of the most obvious. If you're just looking at things all in a vacuum, that would be an example of 2 classes having the exact same ability. It's one example. There's actually a better one, because as I mentioned, the cleric has features that interact with their healing that the warlord does not have, and so in function they are different. What you could point at is that both the warlock and the ranger, yes, the warlock and the ranger both have a class feature called Prime Shot. It gives you a +1 to hit if none of your allies are closer to the target than you are. A cool little, positioning mechanic. And they both have it. It's called the same thing. It is the same thing. It's a shared feature. They both have it. And so that is one feature shared between 2 classes that is actually identical. It works the same way for each of them. Also, Burger King today instead of KFC, because I'm working early and KFC's not open yet. Do not recommend. Didn't even finish it. It was, anyways. So, okay, so we got our sip, we got our cough. I'm set for my trademark events in this video. Where was I? Prime Shot is actually the same. So there's one feature where 2 classes that are supposed to be doing pretty similar things, because Prime Shot doesn't work in melee, it only works in ranged. So if you are playing a shooting ranger, let us say, then you are going to be doing more or less the same kinds of things that the warlock is doing. You're going to be moving around the battlefield. You're going to be taking shots. You're going to be looking for that prime positioning. Now, the warlock interacts with this a little bit differently because they have another feature that synergizes well with Prime Shot, where if they move at least 3 spaces from where they started and they end their turn there, they get concealment until the next turn. They actually go like shadowy and they're harder to hit, which is really cool. I think you will agree. And so they are actually more able to get into the Prime Shot locations more safely than the Ranger can, because the Ranger does not have that kind of protection. They wear heavier armor, and that's their benefit. So that would be a better example. People don't usually look at that because they're looking at powers. Powers are the big flashy parts of the 4th edition class design. Because, they've got the big colored bars at the top. They're a big, square. They're right in your face. You can see them more easily. Just like the way they are visually presented on the page. And so you have one shared class feature between the two classes. No one points at that, because if they did, it would probably be more obvious that you then have to point at how many class features are shared between classes in 5th edition. You have maybe, 2 or 3 classes worth of features in 5th edition. Because if you say that all the 4th edition classes are samey because they have the same power progression, where you get 2 at-wills, an encounter, and a daily at 1st level, you get a utility power at 2nd, you get an encounter power at 3rd, you get feat at 4th, you get, a daily power at 5th, you get a utility power at 6th, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on. Everyone gets a power progression at the same rate. Never mind the fact that these powers are doing different things and that they are different powers to create different experiences. You get them at the same rate, with the same recharge rates. And so people say, oh, it's really samey. Well, you got 5 full caster classes in 5th edition? I think it's 5. Was it Wizard, Sorcerer, Cleric, Druid, Bard? Yeah, 5 full caster classes. So they are all the same? Though all 5 of those classes should just be one class because they use the same progression of spells? That doesn't, that's an obvious bullshit argument. There's no reason to make that argument. But that is what people say about 4th edition classes. So it is really a double standard. 4th edition is the least homogeneous edition of D&D ever, because every class has almost 100% unique abilities. Nearly every ability for every class is unique to that class. No other class has a power that is functionally identical. Or if they do, there are different caveats, like it's got different keywords, or it is higher or lower level based on what the class is supposed to be good at. I'm not saying that there is, like this never happens, but if it does happen, it's incidental and also does not create the same gameplay experience. It would be interesting. I certainly don't have the time to go through the thousands of powers available in 4th edition and see which ones are actually technically identical. I would be surprised if it's more than 1 or maybe 2 powers per class are shared with one other class. It seems like that's about the rate that you would hit. And it's sort of accidental, because sometimes 2 classes are trying to do basically the same thing. And so they're going to use the same mechanics. And so that will happen. But, is that every warlock taking Eldritch Blast? That's a bad analogy. That's a terrible analogy. Is that every wizard and sorcerer also takes Firebolt because it's a good attack cantrip? No. It's so far from that. It's really frustrating. I get frustrated when this lie, and it is a lie, comes up over and over again. It is perpetuated by people who have never played the game, or who did not give it a fair shake. Because I'm sure that there are people who played 4th edition once, one session, decided they didn't like it, and so they didn't learn the game. And so they don't have that sort of they don't have the roots in the gameplay experience that you need to really understand how the system works. And so they took then the lies from people who didn't play the game or who hate the game for other reasons and are trying to come up with arguments for why other people shouldn't play them. These are non-arguments, really, and they're based on the assumption that the people they're telling it to don't know any better. Because if you have played 4th edition, you know that this is not true. So anyways, that's my rant today. I should have done this particular topic dozens of videos ago. This is such a core part of why 4th edition is better designed than 5th, which is that classes all have like richly unique sets of abilities to choose from. And that the argument of homogeneity in 4th edition is just it's a straight up lie. It's a falsehood. There's no basis for it at all. And so hopefully, if you see this argument on the internets, you now have the tools to describe why it is so wrong. And I won't be the only one doing that. All right. Yeah, have fun with that.